Why do so many ambitious minds, so many determined souls, find themselves frozen at the threshold of their dreams? Why do individuals brim with ideas and aspirations, only to see them dissolve into regret? The answer is deceptively simple. Perfection, this word, so often dressed up as a virtue, is in truth a cunning adversary. Perfection whispers that you are never ready, never worthy, never enough. It promises that only when everything aligns flawlessly will you finally begin. And in that seductive promise, life slips by unseen, unclaimed, unlived. Today, I invite you to consider a different philosophy, a mindset that does not wait for perfect timing, perfect clarity, or perfect skill. A mindset that reveres progress, imperfect, raw, and unfinished, as the highest expression of discipline and integrity, because greatness is not an immaculate sculpture. It is a rugged monument built stone by those who dare to start before they feel prepared. It is the reward of those who reject the illusion of flawlessness and instead choose the honest work of steady improvement. By the end of this episode, you will see that imperfect action is not a compromise. It is the very engine of success. You will understand why those who embrace the discipline of continuous progress rise far above those who wait for everything to be just right. And you will be challenged to commit today to one courageous step forward, no matter how incomplete it may feel. Let us begin. Perfectionism is a quiet poison. It seeps into your thoughts disguised as high standards, but it rots your potential from within. It is a conviction that anything less than flawless is unworthy, a stain on your identity, an embarrassment to be concealed. Psychologically, perfectionism originates in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of your own humanity. It emerges when your sense of worth becomes entangled with achievement, when every effort feels like a referendum on your value as a person. If success becomes the only acceptable outcome, every attempt becomes a threat. And when effort is a threat, the easiest solution is to avoid trying altogether. Perfectionism breeds comparison. You measure your beginning against someone else's culmination, your private doubts against their polished results. This distorted lens magnifies your imperfections until they eclipse your strengths. The mind tells you that your ideas are trivial, your skills inadequate, your voice unqualified. In that self-imposed silence, nothing is created. The irony is profound. The more you cling to the fantasy of perfection, the further you drift from authentic achievement. Every plan remains theoretical. Every ambition is postponed. And so the perfectionist becomes the eternal spectator, an observer of others' progress, never a participant in their own. Perfectionism also corrodes fulfillment. Even when you accomplish something noteworthy, the mind discounts it as insufficient. Every milestone is merely an opportunity to criticize what could have been better. Satisfaction is deferred, perpetually dangling just beyond reach. This is a psychological trap, a cycle of paralysis, avoidance, and chronic dissatisfaction. You cannot think your way to readiness. You cannot plan your way to certainty. You can only act. If perfectionism is the poison, progress is the antidote. Philosophically, perfection is an abstract ideal, a concept that exists only in theory. It has no true place in reality because reality itself is fluid, imperfect, alive. Progress, in contrast, is tangible. It can be felt, measured, and embodied. Every imperfect effort is evidence of movement, proof that you are engaged in the work of becoming. Consider the nature of virtue. Integrity, discipline, excellence. These are not static states of being. They are practices cultivated over time through repetition and refinement. You do not become virtuous by imagining the perfect act. You become virtuous by taking imperfect action and aligning your behavior again and again with your highest principles. The human spirit is not designed for flawless execution. It is designed for adaptation. You learn by doing. You grow by iterating. Each misstep teaches you more than 1,000 contemplations. Progress also respects the truth of impermanence. What you consider perfect today will be inadequate tomorrow. What you see as incomplete now will form the foundation of future mastery. Progress accepts this transience with humility and gratitude. And here lies the deeper philosophical liberation. When you embrace progress over perfection, you grant yourself permission to be human. You honor the reality that you are always in the process of becoming. In this acceptance, you find both freedom and purpose. Imperfect action generates momentum. Momentum is not a metaphor. It is a psychological and physiological phenomenon. When you take action, even in small ways, you activate the mind's reward systems. A sense of accomplishment arises, however modest. That sense fuels further engagement, which in turn creates more progress. This positive cycle builds resilience, confidence, and clarity. Contrast this with stagnation. When you wait for perfect conditions, you remain in a state of inertia. Inertia breeds doubt. Doubt breeds fear. Fear reinforces inaction. This is why the first imperfect step is often the hardest and the most important. It breaks the stasis. It pierces the illusion that you must feel ready before you begin. Once you are in motion, the mind shifts from apprehension to engagement. Questions of worthiness give way to questions of possibility. What can I build? What can I learn? The compounding effect of imperfect action is astonishing. One small effort leads to another. One incomplete attempt becomes a scaffold for something better. Over time, these humble increments accumulate into expertise, credibility, and mastery. Momentum transforms the landscape of your aspirations. What once felt insurmountable becomes inevitable. What once demanded courage becomes routine. This is the power of consistent, imperfect action. Discipline is the great equalizer. It does not require talent or luck or perfect circumstances. It requires only the decision to show up over and over, regardless of how ready you feel. Discipline is not glamorous. It is not a fleeting surge of inspiration. It is a quiet commitment to steady progress, an unshakable loyalty to your purpose. Perfection is a delusion. It tempts you to wait for the flawless plan, the ideal mood, the certainty that your work will be beyond reproach. But that certainty never arrives. Those who achieve greatness understand that perfection is an illusion that flatters the ego and weakens the will. They choose discipline instead, a practice that honors the process over the outcome. When you adopt discipline, you shift your measure of success. It is no longer about how polished your results appear. It is about the integrity of your effort. It is about the courage to persist when you feel inadequate. It is about the decision to place progress above approval. Discipline is sustainable because it respects your humanity. It makes space for imperfection, inconsistency, and vulnerability. It recognizes that you will fall short, that you will make mistakes, and that none of these things diminish your worth. In this way, discipline becomes a lifestyle, a reliable rhythm that supports growth without demanding perfection. It is a steady heartbeat that carries you forward when motivation fades and doubt returns. If you are ready to free yourself from the prison of perfection, here are practical strategies to guide you. First, shift your focus. Instead of obsessing over flawless execution, commit to steady advancement. Measure your days by what you contributed, not by what you perfected. Second, set process goals. Outcome goals can feel overwhelming because they depend on external validation. Process goals are within your control. They focus on behaviors, the number of hours you invest, the consistency of your practice, the quality of your attention. Third, create daily rituals. Rituals transform action into habit. By making small efforts part of your routine, you reduce the friction of starting. This consistency is the seedbed of momentum. Fourth, reframe mistakes as data. Every error reveals something valuable. Instead of interpreting imperfection as evidence of unworthiness, see it as feedback that guides refinement. Fifth, celebrate incompleteness. When you finish a draft, a plan, or a first attempt, acknowledge it as progress. Allow yourself to feel satisfaction in what you have created, even if it is still rough. These practices are not complicated. They do not require special resources or extraordinary skill. They require only the willingness to act without guarantees. When you commit to these principles, you reclaim your agency. You stop waiting for validation. You start building, learning, and growing. There's a profound transformation that occurs when you let go of perfectionism. You stop defining yourself by what you have not yet achieved. You stop seeing incompleteness as an indictment of your worth. Instead, you become a practitioner, someone devoted to the discipline of progress. You understand that mastery is not a single act, but a continuum of imperfect efforts. You accept that you will never feel fully ready, and you act anyway. This identity shift frees you from a tyranny of other people's expectations. You no longer crave their approval because your satisfaction comes from the integrity of your own practice. You become empowered. Your sense of self is no longer brittle or conditional. It is rooted in the knowledge that you have the courage to begin, to persist, and to improve. When you embrace this path, you become unstoppable. No setback can destroy you because you no longer demand flawlessness. You demand only honest effort. And that is a standard you can meet every day. Perfection is a prison. It binds your ambition in chains of hesitation and self-doubt. It lures you into believing that someday you will be ready, that someday you will be enough. But there is no someday. There is only now. Progress is liberation. It is a radical decision to act before you feel certain, to build before you feel qualified, to persist before you feel confident. Excellence is not reserved for flawless. It belongs to those who dare to start, who embrace imperfection as the price of growth, who choose discipline over delusion. Integrity is not the product of perfect results. It is a habit of showing up with sincerity and courage, day after day. Success is not an event that happens when all conditions align. It is a process, a series of imperfect steps that accumulate into something extraordinary. Today, you have a choice. You can remain captive to the illusion of perfection, watching life pass you by in a haze of what-ifs. Or you can claim your power. You can take one imperfect action, however small, and set momentum in motion. So ask yourself, what is one thing you have been waiting to perfect before you begin? What is one step you can take today in its raw and unfinished form? Commit to that step. Write it down. Do it before the day ends. Because your greatness is not hidden in the unreachable fantasy of perfection. It is forged in the honest, disciplined work of progress. Let this be the moment you decide to act. Let this be the day you abandon the myth of flawlessness. Let this be the beginning of a new way of living, where discipline, integrity, and courage are your constant companions. Progress over perfection. Always